What is going on, beautiful people? Welcome back to the 817 podcast, where we talk about the lovely city of Fort Worth, Texas. We get into politics, business, culture, news. If it impacts you as a Fort Worthian, we discuss it. We give you one big story, 3 short stories, wins, losses, and actions. So our big story is about Raunaq Alam, a anti-genocide, anti-war activist who's currently in and out of the Tarrant County jail due to a graffiti misdemeanor being escalated as a hate crime. Our guest today is his lawyer, Adwoa Asante, and Lydia Faith, a community organizer with Free Palestine Tarrant. Welcome to the show.
Welcome. Thank you.
Yes. Well, we always start with what is our Fort Worth story. So I would love to know, what is your connection to Fort Worth?
Connection to Fort Worth. So what brings me primarily to Fort Worth is work. And so I'm an attorney in the DFW area. And so I go to Dallas County, I go to Collin County, Denton County, and then I go to Tarrant County. And I will say Tarrant County Courthouse is one of the more cliquey, exclusive courthouses, if you know what I'm saying. You are most successful if you're considered like a Fort Worth lawyer or like a Tarrant County lawyer. But if you're viewed as sort of like an outsider, there is some sort of like coldness and hostility that you might experience. And I hate to say that this is my Fort Worth story because it's a beautiful city. It's a beautiful city. It's a big city. But like I come here for work, and I think I'm gonna take a little break after this in terms of coming to Tarrant County for work. But
yes. Well,
hopefully you come to Fort Worth for fun.
Yeah. No. Okay. So I've been to the botanical gardens. Actually, I went on a date with like my current spouse at the Fort Worth botanical. Maybe I should have said that.
Yeah, look at that. That would have been a nice.
Yeah. So
but
thank
there's
you.
So much more things to do.
I'm sure. And Lydia's gonna show me like.
Yeah,
we're gonna be besties. You can take me get smoothies and stuff. So,
but I think it's also like a lot of like the fact that you have that feeling about Fort Worth goes back to our like Fort Worth way that we constantly talk about with like it's a small town, who's who. It feels like that for anyone who moves here, and so the fact that you feel that just in doing your job, naturally, it's just showing the nasty culture of the city in a lot of ways. Lydia, what's your take as someone who's grown up here as well?
Yeah, so I actually grew up in HEB, Hurst Euless, Bedford, not the store. And I got to give that disclaimer, but grew up there and lived in Fort Worth the past couple of years and been organizing throughout Tarrant County.
Love it. Well, can you guys give us a perspective, as many people, unfortunately, don't know what's going on with Raunaq about the situation?
Yeah.
Can you guys give us context of where we are and what's happening?
Yeah.
So Raunaq is a HEB, I'm learning the term for the first time, kid as well. I think him and Lydia went to the same high school.
Wow.
Hearst, he's from Hearst, and it's right now in Fort Worth, he's in jail. He's in maximum security, which is, it's very unusual to be in maximum security for like non-violent offenses. Okay, like this started as a graffiti, but with all the charges that he has, it's obviously retaliatory and obviously punitive, for what started as a misdemeanor graffiti case, right?
Which was, when can you give us that timeline? Like that, I mean, at least like that happened in March?
So in March of 2024, he was arrested for a misdemeanor graffiti case. Okay. Now, when there's a call, the officer goes to the call, and some of this, came out during the trial. So the officer goes to the scene, and then looks at everything and creates a report. Interesting enough, his body cam disappeared, and I actually never got to see what the respondent officer saw that day because his body cam just poof disappeared. Okay. Like a couple of weeks later, they go to Ronnic's job. It's Euless police officers and the FBI. Okay. Like, why is the FBI here in a graffiti case? So they go to his job. They talk to him. They don't read him his Miranda rights, but he's like on it. So he's like, I want to talk to an attorney. They arrest him at that time. They have a warrant for his arrest, and then they take him outside. The detective decides that he's going to talk to Ronic's like supervisor, and he does, and he offers to talk to Ronic's manager, This is all unusual. Detectives don't really care about your supervisor and your manager usually. And he gets fired. Let's just say that. I don't know what his intention was in doing all that, but let's just say Raunaq gets fired. Then Raunaq's in the car. He's been arrested. The detective's body cam is on during the whole time, the conversation and the arrest. He goes to search Raunaq's car. He doesn't have a search warrant for his car, and the body cam goes off. So he puts the body cam off. And then he goes to search Raunaq's car. And at that time, he's like, we found drugs in the car. So we found shrooms in the car. And so then Raunaq is charged again with the possession of a controlled substance. 2 months after March, in May, the Tarrant County DA's office comes back and they're like, you know what? We don't have enough evidence to go forward with the possession of a controlled substance. We're going to do what's called a no bill of indictment. Okay, so all felonies in Texas go to the grand jury, and most cases are true billed. You don't need a lot of evidence for a case to be true billed. But this was interesting because they were like, oh, we're going to do a no bill of indictment. And I, as a lawyer, my assumption is like, of course, the search is bad. It's a bad search. No search warrant, and your body cam is off, right? So that's good news. So we're going forward with the graffiti case. Then the next thing that happens is that we go to court the first day. We're given an offer of probation for the graffiti case. Cool. Usually you have like a couple of court settings to negotiate. Like you can say, hey, I'll offer to clean it up. I'll offer to pay for it. You know, will you give us something better than probation? Will you make it shorter? But after the probation offer is given out to us, like 6 days later, we get an email like, hey, I've spoken to the chief of the misdemeanor division. All offers have been revoked from this case. Okay, so we're like, okay. We get that there's a political nature to the case because the graffiti was fuck Israel. Like that's what the graffiti was. And it was on like the building of a house of worship. Okay. Now, to give some context, this also came out during this trial. This building had a huge sort of like Israeli flag flying from it, but also their Facebook page, you could see them fundraising and raising money for the Israeli Defense Force. Okay, so.
And was this a synagogue or church? What was it?
No, it was not a synagogue. It was a church. So it was like a Christian church, right? Yeah. And I mean, I don't want to like say their name or whatever, but as part of the representation, we wanted the jury to understand that churches and nonprofits, they get all their tax exemptions. They're not supposed to be political, but raising money, having the pastor go to Israel and giving money directly to like a foreign military is unusual. Okay. I think people may be able to do that personally on their own time, but he was doing it through the church. Like he was asking his congregation to donate. He was using stories of tithe. And he was saying, you know, tithe is 10%, but the blessings start at 11%. You should tithe and give us money so we can give it directly to the Israeli military. Back to the timeline of the case.
You
so
got that letter 6 days.
6 days after, they're like, we're revoking all offers. This will go to trial. Okay, we can go to trial. It's a misdemeanor. Then the next thing that happens is that the prosecutor changes, and it goes from like the misdemeanor court prosecutor to the prosecutor who usually handles the death penalty cases. Okay. And I'm like, okay, you know, like all my alarm bells are going off because, you know, in Texas, you don't get the death penalty. Okay. You don't get the death penalty for this murder. You have to, it's like murder and something. So you have to like murder children, or it's like murder and rape, murder and aggravated robbery, right? Like the death penalty, there's a difference between murder and like capital murder. So this person does capital murder cases. So he does like the worst of the worst cases in Tarrant County. And he asks the jury, he asks regular people to agree to put someone to death. Okay, so he's on the case. So after he gets in the case, we go to court, and when we go to court, Raunaq gets arrested, and we're freaking out. We're like, what's going on? They seize his phone. He gets arrested, and they're like, oh, hey, we're going to bring the possession case that we no billed, we're gonna resurrect that case. And I'm like, okay, because usually when that happens, it's because like there's new evidence, like maybe like in like a murder case, they no bill the murder, but then they find a body and they find like new DNA evidence. They're like, all right, we're coming back. We're within the statute of limitations. We can come back. But in this instance, nothing else had changed, and they were gonna resurrect the case. I should stop using resurrect because of the church trauma. They're gonna bring back. They're gonna bring back the possession case, right? I'm like, okay, cool. So Ronic's all freaked out, and I'm like, hey, like calm down. And that day that he got arrested, it was like a really bad day because like I think the bailiff like assaulted him that day too. It was just like, he was trying to ask me a question because when you get arrested, they like take you, right? Like you're like in custody, so they take you to like this back door place, like with like all these cells and stuff. They take you out of like the public courtroom where people can see you. So he's trying to ask me, hey, can I give you my jacket? He's trying to ask me questions, and like the bailiff is getting frustrated and just like shoves him. He's like, get in there. And I'm freaking out. I'm like, this is a graffiti case, and this is like possession of like shrooms, right? Like this isn't intoxication assault, intoxication manslaughter, sexual assault of a child, like murder, like everyone just like calm down. So he's really freaked out, but we get the judge to agree to a bond. We're able to bond him out. And then we have court the next month. So we have court the next month, and he's like, hey, promise me that I'm not going to get arrested. I'm like, dude, you're not going to get arrested. Like, you getting arrested was a fluke. The next month, I think it's like November of 2024, we're driving. I'm driving to court. I'm like, okay, let me go to court. I get a call. I'm like, oh, hey, Raunaq, what's up? He's like, hey, I'm getting arrested. I'm like, no.
And he's like, the one now is the fifth time?
The one now is the fifth time. So he's been repeat. So it's like nothing had changed since March. He'd already been arrested for the graffiti
of 2024.
For the graffiti and for the drug case that they found in his car with the body cam turned off, right? Then he gets rearrested for the drug case. Then he gets rearrested. I'm freaking out. I get there. I'm like, what's going on? And they're like, we're going to enhance this to a felony. Okay, so initially the damage to the wall was $40. They got new paint. They painted over it. Done. But now they were saying the damage to the wall was $1,700 and that they were going to have to repaint the whole wall. They were going to have to get professional painters to redo the entire wall. And it was going to be $1,700. And because it was $1,700 and because it was a place of worship, which was the church, it was going to be a state jail felony, which is up to 2 years in jail. And then they added the hate crime. And the hate crime was against the state of Israel.
You can have a hate crime against a government?
You cannot have a hate crime against the government.
Exactly.
It was de facto unconstitutional. They were, and I mean, I think that people should be really worried about this because I know that the separation of church and state is not like it's a principle in theory and not like a written principle in the Constitution. But Tarrant County was essentially arguing that Israel, the government of Israel, with the military, a prime minister, a president, one of the most with nuclear weapons, they were arguing that this political entity was going to be covered in the same way that people are covered in hate crime legislation.
That makes no sense.
Yes, it does. So then they tacked on or Jewish faith. They were like, okay, well, we're going to do state of Israel, and then let's just add or Jewish faith.
But that's not what he wrote.
That's not what he wrote, and nothing. I mean, when we did the case, we were like, he didn't say, F Jewish people. He didn't say death to Jewish people. He didn't have, so.
And he literally talked about anti-Zionism.
Yeah, he talked about anti-Zionism. It's not anti-Semitism. We had two experts to kind of really explain that. We had Professor Deb Armentor. She's from, is it UNT? She teaches at UNT. She's like
former Denton City Council.
Yeah,
she's awesome.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, former Denton City Council. She is a co-founder for Jewish Voices for Peace in the DFW area. And she's Jewish. Her family kind of survived the Holocaust. Like, they escaped. They saw the red flags and they were like, we need to leave. And so she comes from that really rich tradition of, like, you know,
Not in my name. Yeah.
Yes, not in my name, and never again means never again for anybody else. So she testified, and she was like, "This is civil disobedience, and this is not anti-Semitic." And then we had Dr. Barry Tregenberg, who is amazing. He's testified in Congress. He's also a professor. He's a professor of, like, Jewish and genocide studies. He's also Jewish, and he's like, "This is not anti-Semitic." You know, he came in and he's like, "This is a criticism of Israel." And so, yeah, so he gets arrested. The hate crime takes it up from a state jail felony to a 3rd-degree felony. So he's facing 10 years in prison. So it's 2 to 10 years in prison.
Wow.
And he's probation eligible because he's never been convicted of a felony. Okay. Prior to this arrest, he hasn't been convicted of anything, like misdemeanor or felony. So he's probation eligible as well. And he gets arrested and he's freaking out. And so I kind of look like a liar because, you know, I'm advising my client and I'm like, look, I've been practicing kind of like 10 years and people don't really get arrested every time they go to court. But we're going to court and Ronag's getting arrested.
Yeah. Well, you were advising him based off the norms, and this is not normal.
That is a very compassionate take. But yes, this is not normal. And I'm worried about how he views me, how he sees me. Like, does he think that I'm telling him the truth? And, you know, and so I have to sort of like rebuild that trust with him. And luckily he's a very, like, understanding, compassionate, like, you know, like a very cool person. And so we're able to get that relationship back on. And then we're set for trial. We are set for trial in September of 2025 because the death penalty prosecutor has a bunch of big trials he has to be in during the whole year. And so we're on his schedule. And we're set for trial September of 2025. And what's interesting is that on his misdemeanor case, he had a judge. And when the case got upgraded to a felony, I was like, okay, silver lining. The only good thing about this is that the misdemeanor judge is not going to be on this case anymore, because I kind of feel like he wasn't being fair to us, and we had filed a recusal. We'd asked for him to remove himself off the case because we thought he wasn't being fair. 1 month until the trial starts, the misdemeanor judge emails me and says, I'm going to be sitting on this case. I'm back on this case. And we're freaking out. We're like, no, like, you're not a felony judge. You're not the district court judge. And he's like, well, you know, Tarrant County is a big county. The county court is a statutory constitutional court, so I can hear felony cases. And we're just kind of like, okay, maybe you can, but you were already on the case and we asked for you to recuse yourself. Why would it be you specifically to be back on this case, you know? And so...
And this September case was basically, is this going to be a hate crime or not? Are we going to get this down?
Two things. Is it a felony, the damage that you did? And our contention was, no, the damage was not a felony. $40, they, like, took care of that damage.
Well, and also, how would $1,700 count as a felony? That seems like a very low number to be a felony.
So because of the place of worship, it starts from $750 up to $30,000. So in the state of Texas, if you destroy property at a school, a church, they're like protected places.
Okay.
If the damage is more than $750 to $30,000, then it's a state jail felony. So that's how they were able to get it. But a huge part of our case was a place of worship that engages in political action would all, like, they kind of give up that place of worship protection because they're doing political stuff, and so they're gonna get like a political response, you know. Like if I incorporate a church, because I could, you know, I'm gonna start a church, and my church, we believe that, well, I mean, let's put it out there, maybe we believe in like segregation, right? Yeah, I mean, churches used to believe in segregation, and that's kind of like the history of using God for like man's evil. That's I don't want to bring up my church trauma, but like that's part of it. Like churches have like this history of like racism and like, you know, sexism, homophobia, transphobia, and now, you know, Zionism and genocide support. But let's say I was funding, like through this church, I was raising money and funding like politicians and like giving money to like, you know, local vigilante groups. Of course, I'm going to expect some sort of political response. I don't think it's fair that if churches act politically, they get to still get the protection of being a church, you know, because it would have still been a Class B misdemeanor. Well, probably a Class A at 1,700. But it would have still been a misdemeanor, even with the 1,700 quote, which I think is BS. If the church wasn't given this like special protection, even though it was acting politically.
And how did moving through that narrative in court turn out?
Not good.
Okay.
It was really frustrating because there was a lot more that we wanted to show the jury, like pictures and imagery and stuff like that. But the jury, look, they get to decide. That's the system we have, right? You might not agree with their conclusion, but and you know, I told them that I'm like, I don't think this damage is worth $1,700, but that's not for me to decide. You're an independent 12 people. And so they decided to find him guilty on the felony criminal mischief. But then, surprisingly and luckily, they said no to the hate crime. So they said, no, this is not a hate crime. And that was some sort of relief because I think the Tarrant County DA's office was trying to set a precedent to conflate opposition to Israel and its genocide to opposition to like Jewishness, right?
Even though hundreds of thousands of Jewish people in Israel are protesting what their government's doing.
Correct. Yeah. And that's something that I brought up. It's like Israelis themselves are protesting. Jewish people in America are protesting. But also the International Criminal Court is like, they have an active warrant out for the prime minister, you know. The UN during the week of our trial came out and said that this is a genocide. Israeli B'Tselem, Israeli human rights like organizations were saying this is our genocide. Like they produced a report saying we are committing a genocide, you know. And so when you have nuclear weapons, you can put like religious stuff in your flag, but you're a political entity.
Now, the big part, though, here that you haven't got to is that even though the jury said no to jail time.
They said no to jail time and they said no to the hate crime.
But then
the judge that we were kind of concerned about, who was on the misdemeanor case, added 6 months of jail time for Raunaq. And that's like the maximum time you can add.
Under what pretense?
Is that normal for
no,
a judge
it's not
to just
normal. It's
something?
not normal.
That was right after he said he respected the jury process.
Yeah.
And I would love, Lydia, I would love to, like, from a county court case and, you know, the leaders that we have in the county, give context of how are you seeing this from that lens and, like, how is this case and trial being an example for these people to do what they believe they're doing for their backings and people of Tarrant County.
Yeah, I mean, this is all, like, about Christian Zionism, right? And so in Tarrant County, you know, as we've said, right, like, Tarrant County is the epicenter of white Christian extremism. And we see it at the city level, we see it at the county level, we see it at the school board level, right? When True Texas Project a couple years ago spent over $500,000 into school board elections to get these Christian extremists into the school board. And so it's all connected, right? And that's why, like, one, people need to be looking out for this case as human beings, and also need to be looking out because they want to do this stuff all behind the scenes. And, you know, a lot of the court in Tarrant County, what they're doing kind of goes behind the scenes, right? Like, so District Attorney Phil Sorrells got elected at the same time as County Judge Tim O'Hare, which we all know Tim O'Hare is shitty. So, sorry for the... but
it's
yes,
putting it mildly.
Yeah, putting it just very simply. And so is District Attorney Phil Sorrells, right? And he can do it more behind the scenes, where Tim O'Hare is doing it right at Commissioner's Court, where people show up time and time again to protest Tim O'Hare. But we also need to be looking at what Phil Sorrells is doing. Yeah. And the, officials who are on this case are backed, by Christian extremist PACs. And, in Tarrant County, we look heavily at Christian extremism, and often what's missing from the conversation is Christian Zionism. And that goes hand in hand. And that's with churches who are even, quote unquote, more liberal, who also participate in Christian Zionism and are very pro-Israel and very pro, occupation.
I'm curious, would you mind trying to define Christian Zionism?
I mean, Christian Zionism is, like, for example, AIPAC, who funds both sides of the parties, like funds everything into our electoral politics. Christian Zionism is a belief that, Israel has a right to exist, and that there's, like, the whole religious, second of coming, and trying to, get this occupational state to secure Jesus coming back. And that's, like, really in simplest terms.
To me, what's also scary about this is because when you look at the political, there's been tons of news about how anti-Semitic our Tarrant GOP leader Beau French is, and the kind of tweets. And, like, so what if I'm Ronic's father or mother, I'm doing this trial in this case in a county that has enabled leadership behaviors that are very dangerous to people who look like them or their child and believe in a different religion than Christianity. So that, to me, is a part of the frightening part. I don't know how where you are of our political landscape in Tarrant County.
Yeah, it's terrifying because, first and foremost, states do not represent the politics of the people. Like, I don't think ICE should exist. Yeah. Okay. And the political projects that is the United States has ICE taking people out of their homes, like kidnapping children, snatching children. So if someone was to say F America, F ICE, I don't think they're talking about me. Yeah. They're talking about the state and its entities. I don't think the death penalty should exist. Yep. I could go down a list of the things that I don't agree that the state that I live in, and so it's also anti-Semitic to conflate the project of, like, the Israeli state with the people, because people have political diversity inherently, and that means that there's some people that might believe in Israel as a state, but then there are some people that are like, no, this is an occupying, ethnocratic, apartheid, genocidal entity, like Deb and Dr. T do, and I don't want to be affiliated with that. And so what we have now, I would argue, is this sort of like well, I didn't come up with this, so I shouldn't say I would argue, but we have like this multicultural, like, white supremacy, essentially, where the policies are destructive to the people, the policies are racist, but the faces can be like a plethora of people. Yeah. And people have to be able to discern and see beyond that. You have to be able to be like, just because someone is black, just because someone is Jewish, just because someone is a woman, because that's, like just because we have specific faces in high places doesn't mean we have freedom, because they're supporting policies that are inherently anti-people, So, yeah.
And then, like, in Tarrant County, it runs so deep, like, that we see the conflation of anti-Zionism with, like, you have to be for Israel to support the Jewish faith, right? We see that, that mixing all the time. Like, for example, and it runs deep, like I said, in Tarrant County. I mean, when Elizabeth Beck got up and declared, full war support for the state of Israel. And then we see that when, like, something happens where there is an anti-Semitism, issue that happens, and politicians get up and say, I support the state of Israel, and use that opportunity to show their support for this occupational state, right? And, that's what... I mean, and the community of Tarrant County are fed up with this, right? Yeah. Like, we're seeing ways in that, Tarrant County is fighting back, and these politicians just don't give a shit. And they're doing what, their money, their beliefs, despite the people not wanting it. Like that PAC put in all of this money, but then a couple years later, a lot of those candidates got elected out, got pushed out because the community was fed up with it. And then here we're seeing in this case, the jury decides to not have a hate crime enhancement. The people are speaking, and then the judge overrules it and gives him jail time. Because even in their punishment, there was no jail time in that.
None.
And then the judge overrides it, and we see that time and time again in Tarrant County.
So then where are we now? Because he's in custody now.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a case coming up? And then I also believe there's another person who's also coming up. Can you give us context what we need to be aware of coming up and what we can be doing as people?
So he's gonna have new representation. He's gonna have new counsel because he was just indicted on a new charge, and he was just indicted on aggravated perjury. And so the DA is saying that when he took the stand during his punishment, he was not honest under oath. And so it's going to be aggravated perjury.
What are they claiming he wasn't honest about?
So they asked him some questions about like drug use and stuff like that. And so they compared his answers to things that they got from his phone. And they're saying that he was not honest about that. I'm not going to be the lawyer on that case because it is a conflict, because I was there for the official proceeding. And so, if you're there, it's kind of a conflict to be the attorney. The DA's office, though, didn't think that. The same prosecutor that asked him those questions, it's the same prosecutor that went to the grand jury to get the indictment. And he's a witness in his own case.
Capital murder
This is
lawyer?
a capital murder prosecutor, the death penalty prosecutor.
For perjury.
They could have at least attempted to appear neutral. They could have waited for the transcripts. They don't have to indict this case in 2 weeks. They could the statute of limitation is a couple of years. They could have waited 6 months to indict the case, right? And this is what I'm talking about in terms of the political retaliation, because this is not normal, first of all. But secondly, you're the one asking the questions, right? Which means if this were to go to trial, anybody should be able to call you as a witness to say, hey, what did you mean by this question? Do you see how this question could be misinterpreted? Do you see how this question is inconsistent with this as part of the case? But you're now the witness and the prosecutor in the case. They always want to play judge, jury, executioner. They want to play all the roles. And that's not their role. They're supposed to be independent. They're supposed to be objective. And they're so corrupt and power drunk that they're used to being able to do whatever they want and treat people however they want to treat people. And this is a classic example. Because even if you thought, you know what, this person perjured himself and we are going to go forward with charges, have an independent investigation. Have someone from your office who's not affiliated with this case in any way make that decision. But that would appear neutral. I would argue that's still not neutral, but that would at least appear neutral.
Yeah. And I think the part that I want to make sure also I'm getting right here is that it's not just being anti-Israel that they're trying to make him seem like a villain on, but it's also this Islamic phobia kind of because I don't know his nationality, but
race
and all
they
that.
They called him a terrorist during the.
Can we talk about that? Because that's
crazy.
Because Bo French's tweet that I was it was something like
who's a bigger threat?
Who's a bigger threat, a Jew or a Muslim? And that was a Tarrant County GOP leader's tweet. The leader of the Republican Party in Tarrant County. And so you have...
Who they all go to lunch with,
yes.
I'm sure. You got Wayborn, Bill Wayborn, the sheriff, the
who's
county
dealing
judge, Tim O'Hare, District Attorney Phil Sorrells. They meet up every Sunday probably at their church.
Yeah, and you have, and that's the other part is that, Bill Wayborn is known for this jail to be one of the most dangerous jails in this country.
Over 79 murders.
Yep, and so
it's a horrible jail.
And you have this kid. So there's that part as well. That this is not just about
No.
is Israel also being mean, anti-Semitic. It's also that Islamic phobia kind of energy, right?
It's also very much about race and very much about like Islamophobia because, okay, so as the trial's going, the trial is set for September 8th. And I realized, like, the second day of trial, this is going to go into 9/11. Like, the trial's going to happen during 9/11. So, like, I'm bracing myself. We do closing arguments on 9/11. Prosecutor gets up there, and he goes, this isn't civil disobedience. This is terrorism. And Raunaq is, like, having this, like, visceral reaction, right? Because, like, Raunaq grew up post 9/11 and experienced a lot of like abuse about, you know, like about his faith and about his like race and like, you know, like being a brown man. And he was, anyway, so I have to sort of sort of try to manage his emotions and be like, okay, you know, like, let's let the jury, it's still in the jury's hands. They get to decide, you know. I mean, I just think that calling it terrorism over spray paint that is like political in nature, right? That is like from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. And I think there was like a whole thing about, they talked about how like the children of the church would have to walk past the spray paint. They cleaned it the same day, but they were like really concerned about like what the children would see. And it's like, okay, you know, like Palestinian children have to like hold on to the dead bodies of their parents. Palestinian children have to get surgery without anesthesia. You know, like Palestinian children have to deal with things that we as adults probably could never deal with. And that's like, to be honest, that's sort of like the white supremacist nature of this argument, because it reminds me of like Jim Crow, where the parents are saying, we don't want to integrate, we don't want our children to be exposed to, you know, black people, but also even like the progressive parents at that time were saying, we don't want our children to be exposed to the violence that'll come from integration. Right? Like, we don't want our children to see what'll happen if you force us to integrate. But okay, but black children have to see their parents hanging off trees. Yeah. You know, and in addition to that, black children themselves, like the youngest person to get the death penalty, George Stinney, was a child, 14 years old. Black children have to worry about getting the death penalty. Children were put to death in this country legally, you know, by the states through the death penalty.
And that's what, yeah. And that's what I feel like, you know, seeing Raunaq move throughout this is he understands that no matter how hard this has been for him, he has such a depth of understanding of how hard it is for the kids in Gaza, the history before him. And I feel like I've always respected the demeanor that I think if I was going through what he was going through, I'd be.
He's so real.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
I got two final questions. This last one that I really want to, I think you all are also addressing politics and messaging around Tarrant County politics, because, you know, there's discernment to even, like you said, people from all parties and even the political party game as a whole. And I think there is a moral code and a new narrative that's needing to be built if there's ever going to be change. And it seems, and what I know of Lydia for a long time, is that it feels like there's a disconnect from the two-party system, and there needs to be something new. And I just want y'all's feedback, because I think we deal a lot with the podcast is trying to just simply take the moderate agenda to make it a progressive agenda. But I think you all are tapped into a community, a vibrant community, a bunch of people who want to see a better world, who's just kind of maybe don't believe in anyone can actually pull it off in its current system. So what would you give advice on, like, how do we push the narrative to get more political clarity and boldness from a two-party system that's not meeting the moment of fascism and, you know, white supremacy takeover? You know, even just hearing you talk just now about that white guilt about, oh, the kids walking across and seeing the spray paint. We saw that with also how people experienced this whole death of Charlie Kirk. And we in Tarrant County had the rally to memorize Charlie Kirk. Every county, Denton, Dallas, the one starts with an H, Hood County, they came to Fort Worth, and the same people you're talking about, Tim O'Hare, Bill Wayborn, Nate Scatzline from Mercy Culture, all spoke at the Kirk rally. And so it's like, but I think we are dealing with, the rest of our short stories are going to be around like, these right-wing extremist politicians are using this moment to push harder into their radical values. Yet we still exist in a world where our democratic, supposed to be people are living in a moderate, they move 2 steps to the right, I'm going to meet them in the middle. And so I guess I would love to hear y'all's take on how do you see activating young people, black and brown people, in the Metroplex?
The big question.
What a hard question. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I always say that, like, we the people are different from the government. Mm-hmm. And that was even in my closing. You know, like the government is a political entity. The government cannot suffer. It cannot bleed. We the people, we eat, we breathe, we suffer, you know. We the people have religion. The government cannot have a religion because it's not a living person, you know. And that's kind of, I mean, that feeds into like the issue here is like what happens when the government declares a religion, you know, and that is theocracy. What happens when Israel is a theocracy? What happens when like Saudi is a theocracy? What happens when people are trying to make the United States a theocracy, like a Christian, you know, nationalist agenda? Is that the governments cannot die, so it cannot have a relationship with God. Only we the people can. And so the government doesn't get to take people's traits and use it for its agenda. And one classic example that I think about is like the Citizens United case, where they're saying that, you know, corporations can be people and so they can have free speech. And now they've poured money into all these super PACs, and this is where we are. So if the only thing I will say is that we the people have to take care of each other, and we have to stand in solidarity with each other, and we have to organize with each other. I would love to see a massive strike. Yeah. You know, and it just goes back to what I'm saying. We really have to ask ourselves, is it worth it to separate ourselves as humans from each other on the basis of like race, borders, sexuality, nationality? Should we separate ourselves as humans from each other? Because if we don't stick together, I don't see how we make it if we don't stick together. And so we have to stick together. I say we go on strike.
Yeah.
Maybe, like,
well, yeah, and we're in that moment. Like you're like, right. Like we're going through an economic, a political, a spiritual, like what is the 21st century? How do we civilize?
Yeah.
And that means how do we actually matter in a game that's trying to
and people like
make us exist.
We are scared. Like people are scared to like take the streets, which is cool.
America is though. I mean, again, something I remember Lydia 2 years ago talking about this exact thing about we need to talk more about Palestine. And I'm like, but is it local? And I'm like. And, you know, full disclaimer, I apologize for not bringing this to the front. Bringing this
Lydia
story.
Vindicated.
Has not brought this specific story up locally. But I am shaking and like, when are we in the streets with pans beating, ready to scream for what's going on? Why is America like this?
Like, what I'm saying, though, is that the good thing about a strike is that you don't even have to be in the streets. Just stay home.
Yeah, to be fair, people are in the streets, though. Yeah. Like, I mean, shoot, that's good. Like, Raunaq, always, like, you know, and stuff. And, like, there is that, like, I think the thing is that, like, first, like, just knowing Tarrant County, knowing the moderates, growing up in Northeast, you know, Democrat, all of that, moderate, okay? And, like, this might be hard for some people to listen to, but like I said, you know, like I've spoken to different people within the church who claim to be progressive, who claim to be, liberal, and like I would just challenge to look at your Christian Zionism, because like even churches who claim to be like, oh yeah, we're radical, I've been not shocked. Like you're like, dang, yeah, this is of course, but like more of like oh okay, like they're like, no, Israel all the way, and it's like, like that's why they say Palestine is the litmus test, and it like takes back the curtain, or drops the curtain of like how Democrats and Republicans are so much alike, and in Tarrant County, like there is, one, like I'm a part of, the Fort Worth Environmental Coalition, which, came from the Echo Heights and Stop 6 Environmental Coalition in Northside Fort Worth Air. And, Jeanette Martinez is the city council over that. And we see that she claims to be progressive, right? And she recently voted against DEI. And for the past couple of years, she's been voting against the, well-being and the health of the Echo Heights community. And so when she voted against DEI, we were like, yeah, we've been saying this, but constantly, the Democrats are like, oh yeah, like, vote blue no matter who, or like, we got to do this. And it's like, when are we going to hold our, I'm not a Democrat, but when are Democrats going to hold their Democrats accountable? And like, when are we going to get past this facade of like, oh yeah, they're, they're Democrats, so they're good. Like, Elizabeth Beck is not a progressive. Jeanette Martinez is not a progressive. Like, and I would say the only person on that city council fighting would be Deborah Peoples. And I don't like to give credit to any politician. Okay. Like, that. And so like, it's a, like it's really, and just saying, like, about building community, and a lot of our resources, a lot of our time are spent in these electoral politics, and we have to be, at the same time, if not more, building community with each other, and understanding each other, and like building this collective, so that we can challenge our beliefs, and that there's different ways to get involved. There's protests. There's the, strike. There's, and these things have been happening for the past 2 years. And from beyond, or before that, right? And I would just challenge Christian moderates, or just anyone who claims to be Christian. I'm a Christian. And like, we have to fight this Christian Zionism. It is a disease that is going into the politics, that is, ruining the lives of millions of people. And we have to like really start fighting that within these churches. You mentioned Mercy Culture, right? Who is really like a part of this Christian Zionism, if not leading it in Tarrant County. And but we have to look at how it is in the churches that say they're progressive.
I want to say one last thing
about this.
Yes.
Perfect. Bring it.
The last thing I want to say is this: how come like Christianity in its political imagination isn't manifesting in a way that says, I'm Christian and I deeply oppose homelessness, and I'm Christian, I think everyone should be fed, and I'm Christian, I think jails shouldn't exist. Like, why doesn't it ever manifest in, as a Christian, I believe that the material needs of the people need to be met? Why is the political imagination of Christianity always, I'm Christian, so we should take away trans people's rights?
No, literally. Because that's what, like, Jesus believed in fighting for those who are oppressed. Like, it's really just that simple.
Jesus was killed by the government.
Literally.
Like, Pontius Pilate. Jesus was crucified by the state. We'll stop.
But I'm saying,
Jesus was killed by the state. Everybody, don't believe the government.
Yes.
Even Jesus couldn't escape the government at the end of the day. I mean, shout out to Jesus, like, came to die for our sins. But
I think this the thing that you didn't say about why Christians should also then believe that you have the freedom to not be a Christian in our democracy and believe whatever you want to believe.
For sure.
Because the question I was going to ask, but since you took us here, is the current run of the Democratic leaders is a James Tallarico, who is really front-facing about God and Christ. So I would love, what's your interpretation of what you're seeing from a voice like him?
I don't know. I grew up very much like, okay, if you have the Holy Spirit in you, people will see it, and
Yeah.
that's enough.
Yeah.
Like, I
Yeah.
didn't grow up like, go evangelize, right?
Yeah.
And so, I personally, I mean, this is
Yeah.
a personal thing where I'm like, you don't really need to do all that. But
Yeah,
like,
no, because I mean that's because of the diverse communities, the diverse religions and ideologies in the Metroplex or even in Texas, it still seems like, Christianity is the center of the candidate, even if he is what you just said. I think Tellerico is selling. We need health care for all. We need no homeless people need to be fed. Public schools need to be funded, but it's still in the lens of white Christian kind of narrative building to convince the white Christians, where I think there's this lack of activating a group of people that we all know that don't even identify as Christian, but we need to get activated to believe in a place where humanity takes care of all, regardless of religious affiliation.
Yeah, like I don't think the candidate's religion matters, but like the shared values.
Yeah.
Like you can be a non-believer, Christian, like Hindu, like you could be Muslim, you could be any sort of like
Non-denominational.
yeah. But then if you have the shared value that like people shouldn't starve to death, then you'd be like, okay, well we should have some sort of system where people don't have to starve to death. Let's just like give people cash so that they don't have to starve to death. That's, forget food stamps. Just go house to house. Everybody gets like $2,000. Here you go. Everybody gets cash. We took it from the bombs that we drop on the children. We took it from the troops in Congo. Okay, we took it from the war machine. Everybody's gonna get food, and then goodbye. How about that?
Yes.
And like also just sorry, real quick, going off of that, like I think it's really important that Christians always wanting to engage the side that's like, what they choose. Like, why are they trying so hard to go after white moderates? Why, like, rather than engaging the base that does exist.
Yeah.
Like, you know how many people would go out there like, I want free health care.
Yeah.
I would like housing for people. I would like us to stop a genocide.
Yes.
I would like, in DFW, there's over 23 weapon manufacturers, war companies in DFW.
Yeah.
And I would like our money to go away from that and to support the people. You know how many people would come out? So why are they still engaging this moderate, this perspective?
Yeah, because they're funded by the same people.
Yeah, I know. Okay. Well, that's the answer.
Yeah, so to bring it fully closing is, I love that we also took it on a macro lens, and again, would love, you guys are welcome back. But what any next action steps for Raunaq that we need to talk about?
Yeah, free Raunaq, man.
Yeah.
Some of the ways that people can get involved is to follow NOG_DFW. They've been posting a lot of updates. On Friday, a lot of they called out for support to come and pack the court for the hearing. So there will be other updates around that. Also, you can follow Ronic and get updates and hear more about his story from I_Ronic, but it's RAUNIC. And then you can get involved with different orgs like PYM, Palestinian Youth Movement, Dallas. You can get involved with Free Palestine Tarrant. There's a bunch of different orgs that are, fighting against this, who have been fighting against this for a while. So.
Yeah, and there's also a GoFundMe that people can help support.
Yes, there is a GoFundMe. So if you do go to NOG_DFW, there's a GoFundMe, but the short link is bit.ly/Ronic Defense Fund.
Yeah.
And that is spelled RAUNAQ,
Yeah.
Defense Fund.
Yeah.
And you can go donate to his GoFundMe.
Well, thank you guys so much for coming on to the podcast and sharing an
Yeah.
important Tarrant County story.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Yeah.
the work you guys have been doing in this space. People like you make me believe that we can actually do some turning in the Metroplex.
We can always do some turning everywhere.
Yes.
We'll turn it real fast.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Perfect.
There you have it. It was Adwoa and Lydia with a full episode. We could have been 4 hours with them just talking about the future narrative of humanity.
Absolutely.
So that was really great, and I think we'll keep everyone updated with where that goes. Due to the length of that one, though, we're gonna rapid fire these 3 stories. The first short story we're gonna talk about is an update from when we were addressing
So
Mayor Parker.
Last episode we recorded before the Charlie Kirk rally had happened.
Yes.
And we should, give people info about what actually happened there and the aftermath. So.
Yeah. So I think the biggest takeaway there is Mayor Parker wrote a letterhead about Councilwoman Beck saying something in her personal account about Charlie Kirk using his own words. We talked about that 2 episodes ago. Then that led, though, to what we saw is that every political Republican county chose Fort Worth as the meeting ground to honor Charlie Kirk.
All the far-right organizations sponsored that event.
Yeah. Patriot Mobile, Text True Project, and then you had people like Bill Wayborn who spoke.
The politicians.
Yes, you had Nathan Scatzline, you had Carlos Terusio and his wife, but with the ultimate idea where I think the biggest climax point of hate, and it all was they tore a pride flag and kicked it down the city hall steps and said a lot of evil behavior around trans and the LGBTQ community as a whole. And there was cheering that happened.
And that was Carlos
Terusio. And his wife ripped it, and then he kicked it down. And there was a lot of yelling of, war. We're in war with people. We're in a spiritual war. And I think, to me, what we called is that there's a bunch of people showing up to this to honor Charlie Kirk. But it was also, people's perception of who Charlie Kirk was. It showed, the more I learn is, people really just don't know who he is. And somehow their churches or their places of media has positioned this around, this Christian white man who is trying to save Christian values is now martyred for the movement. And so now these radical underbellies are taking these kind of people who are well, I'm religious. I believe that Christ is, important. But then didn't realize they actually were at a this evil, that didn't elevated, and that's kind of what I took. What did you see? I mean, I don't know if you watched any of the videos of them speaking. Shout out to a couple independent report, people went undercover to actually record the speeches.
Yeah, I mean, it's just wild to see because, I mean, you notice in that event and Charlie Kirk's funeral, you don't hear a lot of them using his own words. Because they know that it's hate speech. They know that his entire life was dedicated to divisiveness and egging people on for violence, and that's what a lot of the rally in Fort Worth is opportunists taking advantage of a victim of gun violence to point that anger and hate and grief and sadness to vulnerable communities, not the root of the problem, not too much access to guns and too much extremism on the internet. They want to point it at whoever they don't think should exist in the world, and it's despicable to see, and it's very frustrating that it happened in Fort Worth, and I hope that it never happens again. But yeah, I mean, Maddie Parker invited this into our neighborhood.
Yeah, gave him the keys.
Yeah.
And so the next step that we need to address is that on Tuesday, members of the community went and spoke out to Mayor Parker, and there was about 21 speakers, and of the 21, 12 spoke directly to Mayor Parker saying, "You enabled extremism, do better," and they said it in a bunch of different ways. You also had some people from the event also there or associated with the agenda that was of the event, also kind of share some very hateful messages. If anything, it showed more about what we allowed into the city. And then now we also have an article from the Fort Worth Report where Fort Worth and Arlington's mayor signed onto a declaration against political violence.
And I do want to make this clear that this wasn't in reaction to Charlie Kirk necessarily.
Yes.
This letter only started after there was a shooting at the ICE facility in Dallas.
Yes.
And same thing with, as soon as there was a shooting, the far right immediately started to blame the left. And then as more details come out, it becomes more clear that it was likely someone even further to the right than these extremists. I mean, I remember seeing the photo of a bullet that says anti-ICE.
Yes.
No one
Yes.
no one says that unless they're
Yes.
trying to set up, because those are not the words that anyone would use.
Yeah, and that is, so we're not going to really hit too much on this story.
Yeah.
But obviously that's a national story that's hit this storm about there was people who got murdered or killed in that situation. We still have not a lot of clarity at the recording of this on Sunday. But that is what stirred the political violence of 40 different mayors across the country actually signing on to this, like, let's stop political violence.
Which is a message that we can get behind, but
Yes.
also it would be even better if it was against gun violence, because
Yes.
that's how these deaths are made possible, and there's way more people who die from gun violence than necessarily Charlie Kirk and these people at an ICE facility. Like,
Yes.
that is the problem.
Yep. So, again, I think as it's kind of ironic, we're also talking about this at the same time the Fort Worth gun show billboards were up and saying they were here and we have the largest gun show.
Hate it.
The narrative, you have Bill Wayborn speaking at the rally saying that America is a Christian nation. As you hear from our big story, the battle of, it's not even a battle. I think the narrative that they want to control and ultimately build out their agenda over us having a more humane, global collective conversation about how we civilize in the 21st century with more intentionality, connectivity that's not tied to one race, one way of living, and one extreme in points that are pitting people against each other. If it's immigrants or newcomers who are dealing with ICE, or if it's right-wing podcasters who are spouting hate and extremism views to get people radicalized, which often then use guns to do what they want to do in their journey, which creates danger. We have to be able to still come together in spaces and community to show that, like No Kings that is coming up, that peaceful protests, but then also acts of community-based, standouts or protests.
Community action.
Yeah, community actions are something we're starting to think about, because I think we're at that next level where there has to be more us standing up and saying enough is enough.
Absolutely.
And you're seeing that.
Yeah, well, that does lead us nicely into our second short story, which is kind of a bunch of different stories that are related, and how this past week we've seen a lot of people power versus people in power. And so we touched on that in the big story about how the people are making clear what we as a community, we as a city, we as a county want, and it is falling on deaf ears from those elected politicians. A great example that we talked about last week was the county commissioners vote for the tax cut. A tax cut that is so deep that we would lose tons of services.
Tens of millions of dollars.
Exactly. And so people showed up to speak against it. Elisa Simmons was leading the fight to try and stop it. And all the Republicans on Commissioner's Court needed was Roderick Miles to show up and allow this to happen. And even though we were all trying to convince him, like, don't, your political career will be over. The damage will be nearly impossible to reverse. And he showed up.
Yep. And so I attended that Commissioner's Court. I spoke at Commissioner's Court with several other kind of community members. And the positioning of it, first there was this, like, you bad boy, you shouldn't have missed last week, do better, that Manny and Krause was trying to do. But they try to position it like you kind of left there like you shouldn't have been disappointed in Roderick because of the staff jobs that were saved. Right. But it was
Still settling for crumbs.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And to me, it only shows that, in my opinion, that Commissioner Miles is in agreement with Judge Tim O'Hare that government services is a waste of funds, because you're more focused on just funding the people over the services that were being distributed to the people. So when we just are more focused on prioritizing staff, which I get is a hard decision, and which I get is, if you're an individual staffer who now has a job and you feel released that you can pay your bills, that is great. But at the end of the day, we all have made that decision on the backs of these services that we were providing no longer are going to be possible. And now we're going to have a tax rate that we're talking anywhere from $20 to $80 million of impact on our county.
While we're growing.
And yeah, I think when you hear about that big story, I think Commissioner Miles is an example of they keep going 2 steps to the right, and he keeps trying to meet him in the middle, thinking he's doing his job. And I don't think we need to be looking at 2026. And 2026 needs to be a tone of saying that we're enough with that kind of leadership at the progressive level.
A lot of county seats will be up for election in 2026. But yeah, so on this same subject, a judge is set to decide about the efforts for Tarrant County election maps after hours of testimony. So that's the headline from Fort Worth Report. And this is what we've been talking about all summer, is these racistly gerrymandered maps. A judge is set to figure out, are they racist? I mean, we know they're gerrymandered to hell, and will they stand? Because everyone is having to start filing now for that election in 2026. And the lines got shifted quite a bit, so people don't even know, which which precinct they live in to know what to run for. People don't know what precinct they live in when they can vote.
Yeah.
And so this is a huge decision, and clearly the people are against this. This is so blatantly awful. And right now we just have to hope that a judge will listen to the people. We just learned that that in Raunaq's case, he didn't listen. I mean, Tarrant County has a reputation of our legal system being a good old boys club. So,
and if you remember a couple of podcasts back, we talked about how Governor Abbott created a whole separate business attorney group, and now you got even large corporations using Tarrant County as a place to get away with their corruption. Elon Musk is constantly somehow in court in Tarrant County for the things he's doing. And so their understanding is good old boys club. And let's be clear, Texas A&M is the certification to the good boys club. It is the knocking of the ring. And if you hear, lawyers who talk about, the hardest thing to go against is if you're in Fort Worth and you're not a Fort Worth lawyer, that's the number one hard part, because the Fort Worth lawyers get more benefits in Tarrant County. But then if you have an Aggie ring and that judge has an Aggie ring, that is the other thing that shows. And so, again,
I didn't know this.
Yeah, I am a hyper believer that there is an entire Texas cultural system that is creating this state power, and we're not talking about it enough. That they have controlled an education institution. They're using our city as the spot to create a operating system of a large city based off of what they want to distribute out to a county. And that's why we have to stand up and stand out against all parts of this institutional push. Because you also heard one of Lydia say about how a lot of our companies are based in the military complex, the industrial complex of weapons and things like that. So we're in that middle. And you also saw people stand out at Craig Goldman's thing, which Craig Goldman was in town, which I feel like no one really knew that.
You might have seen those missing posters around town saying Craig Goldman missing. Cause, I mean, ever since he's got elected, he's so rarely here. He so rarely speaks with constituents. He
stays in the Fort Worth club or the city club. He does not.
Yeah,
he does
he's
not
out
move
in public.
Out. Yeah. Yes, and so you had protesters at that
demanding a
town hall. Because of his eliminating of Medicaid and health services.
He's got a lot to answer for.
And so, all in all, this is, I think the short story too is people power not being listened to. And what are we going to do as we prepare for 2026 to show and flex that power, to start showing them, well, if you ain't going to start listening to us, changes are coming.
Exactly.
Cool. So we're going to move into short story number 3. Short story number 3 was also somewhat highlighted in the big center. And we also, me and you talk about AI and data centers all the time. So now without Ann here, look what we get to talk about. Data centers.
I'm glad you're coming around to my way of seeing things.
Yes.
So the article is from Dallas Morning News. Didn't you say it was front page?
Of the business part of the Sunday paper.
It says that Dallas-Fort Worth is a leading data center market with a significant scale issue. And, you read the article.
Yes.
Tell us what you read.
So the big parts here is as of last September, Texas had 279 data centers. Half of them are in Dallas-Fort Worth. And if you look at the rise was now there's 388 and there's 190 in DFW. So still looking at half. But when you look at the energy and the output of these data centers, they're showing that like Encore, which is a Dallas-based energy distributor, who distributes, by the way, 40% of the entire Texas system's electricity. Their chief strategy officer, who is like trying to prepare for this moment, he quote says, "Data centers in their current form are relatively new for us." Jeffrey Bailey, VP of Corporate Strategy of Encore Electric Delivery. So he's saying that while at the same time, today, data centers that Encore have strategically worked with back in the day operated to 30 to 50 megawatts, while the average data center today is 700 to 800 megawatts. And when you look at like what Encore is dealing with is when towns like Wilmer are able to connect to a data system, their population of 6,000 people, now their electricity in Wilmer is peaking 8 times greater than the city of Austin. And so,
what the
fuck? So it is actually like, to me, when you and I talk about AI and data centers, I talk about like,
like AI.
I do like AI, and I think AI is definitely, we're living in a tool of like, and it happens every time when innovation comes out. We're living at a tool where something has been unlocked when it comes to optimizing for efficiency, getting to something quicker and cheaper. And it's like, we're in a car horse situation of usage of the internet. And I think like Google search was like, okay, we learned a horse, like we learned about Google search, and now we're in like car mode of the internet. But I also understand the consequences, because we know how much we feel about cars, is in the same situation of data centers and AI. And I do think like those are ethical discussions we have to have, but we can't deny that the efficiency and speed of human ingenuity, I believe, is going to be able to be accelerated because of this new unlock, and it isn't going anywhere.
I disagree.
And I know we're not here to talk about that disagreement, but I think when because also the point.
Well, that's a big part of why I think it's so ridiculous is like the amount of benefit you gain from AI is so small compared to the costs. Like, I don't understand why we're building data centers, like AI data centers and stuff in North Texas when Texas has a notoriously horrible electrical grid.
Totally makes sense.
And the reason is because we don't want to match the same federal standards as the rest of the country. So like we already can't handle it. And like all of our power bills are going to go up trying to meet this unnecessary demand, and water bills are going to go up too because they need so much cooling to keep them functioning. And it's just so stupid. Why are we doing this?
Yeah,
I wouldn't even be that mad if you had to pay every single time that you used AI. That's the problem, is that it feels essentially free when the costs are so high. I feel like that would cut down on people's overusage of it, and it would hopefully balance it out more, but we got to fix our electrical grid before we start messing with this shit.
Yeah, and I think when I think of the AI curve is like anything of technology. Like, right, when the first time the TV showed up, it cost $10,000 to have a TV or your own personal computer. Now you can get a Google Chromebook for less than $100. So the problem is high today. But when you look at the exponential of innovation, the cost of doing things will change dramatically. But I think the ethical code over the next 5 years is it's burning a lot of resources to exist today. And you're right, like research estimated AI alone could be responsible for the withdrawal of upward of 2.4 million Olympic-sized swimming pools of fresh water in 2027 alone. So
fresh water. It's not even recycling that water for cooling. Yeah.
So I think that is, I think you're that guy that, like, to me, like, I think the other whole battle is like, look at our phones. It's like, okay, then let's not use our phones. Like, smartphones went through the same crisis of water, of semiconductor chips. Like, The iPhone.
That's on a totally different scale though, because you make one phone and it's its own thing.
But the amount of flipping of the phones.
The fact that you can't opt out of most AI is just causing an overusage.
Correct.
Yeah.
Like now you're Google searching and it's AI.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the results are wrong most of the time.
See, I don't know what you're Google searching over here.
I'm Googling very specific things.
But let's go ahead and roll into wins, losses, and
Yes.
actions.
So we do have a very fun win. Is that
Yes.
Fort Worth Weekly recently put out their best of 2025, and when it came for best podcast, Critics' Choice,
Right here.
7 Pod.
And I love how they organized and talked about all of us. Somehow I'm still an entrepreneur, EJ, and then Anne's like former councilwoman, and you were like you had the coolest name. You were like czar activist, community leader, art advocate.
Let's read the actual thing so that we're not making stuff up.
Wesley's the coolest of us all in this. I was like, I just get entrepreneur, the guy who likes AI, and you over here get.
Okay, so yeah, it says hosted by entrepreneur EJ Carrion, former city council member Ann Zeta, and media producer / activist Wesley Kirk. 817 Pod delivers regular updates and analyses of the city, county, and statewide politics, and is a must listen for anyone who thinks that Republican overreach has extended far beyond the hold my beer, watch this phase into truly terrifying territory. It's a fun way to talk about us.
I loved it. And really cool to see that. You also got a couple other things.
Oh, yeah. What's funny is, so on the list of things, there's best podcast. Immediately under that is theater production, where the Reader's Choice was Sherlock Holmes and the Adventure of the Fallen Souffle at Stage West, which my wife was the villain in.
Come on now.
And then immediately under that is Critics' Choice for The Heart Sellers at Amphibian Stage, which I was working there when that happened.
Love it.
Still working there. And then also, so that happened, and then the very next day, Fort Worth Magazine came out with their best of 2025. And this was a surprise to me, is that Reader's Choice for Best Actor and Performer was my wife, Amanda
Come on
Reyes.
now. Look at that. Incredible.
A lot of cool people in this city.
Yes.
Hell yeah.
So that's our win. I mean, losses wise, I guess we really didn't have a chance to talk losses.
Yeah. So there's a few unfortunate ones.
I could talk about.
There's for losses. There's one I wish Ann was here for. Is that Fort Worth Report put out an article just today saying $500 million in federal funding delays could affect North Texas transit projects.
Yeah.
It is insane to me that this is happening in general, but ahead of FIFA.
Yeah.
FIFA is next year, like mid-June through mid-July, where we're going to have such an influx of people from all around the world who are used to good public transit and want to take transit. Yeah. And I don't know how the hell anyone's getting around. I mean, how are they going to get to the stadiums in Arlington? Yeah. It'd be a good time to be an Uber driver, but everyone's going to be stuck in massive traffic, and we could solve this with good transit.
Man, am I just not going to be, do I need to not live here for 2 months?
Yeah. If you can get away for a bit, do it.
I thought you were going to bring up the loss of...
Oh, yes. So our other losses is that Rebecca Lau Sculpture Gallery is closing after 30 years. That is sad because I want more and more art spaces in Fort Worth. And hers is a rare space because it is also a studio space. So lots of great sculptors in Fort Worth have been doing their work there. If you're ever going way down Camp Bowie West and you see a place covered in neon, that is her sculpture gallery, and it's a cool place. I don't know that she's closing it quite yet, so I would recommend checking it out while you can. And then another loss is a weird one. So Hip Pocket, their spooky season show was supposed to be Frankenstein, and they canceled it very abruptly with a very weird Instagram post that said, due to high profile recent events, we are canceling this show for everyone's safety. And I have a lot of friends at Hip Pocket, and I have friends who were in that show, and that's a weird way to phrase it. And
what does it mean, do you think?
Okay, I do have the full story. I can't say much of it, but Amanda was furious. Like, she thought this was a censorship thing, and she was, on a warpath. We were ready to produce this ourselves. And then we found out the full story, and it is more complicated and messy, and no one wants to throw anyone under the bus, which I think is why they've been so secretive about it. Because KERA put out a story about it, Fort Worth Report put out a story out about it, and Hip Pocket is not commenting at all, which is so bizarre to me because
it sounds like it needs to be a short story next week when we get more detail.
I'll see if anyone wants to actually talk about it. But the weird part is like they could have easily gone through this whole show without anyone, because it doesn't even have anything necessarily to do with recent high profile events. I think they're just worried that the far right extremists are on a hunt right now for anything to be mad about, no matter whether or not it actually is related to anything they care about.
Well, then we can't operate scared though. Like
exactly.
That is weak.
I would hope that this year would have really set the tone for this kind of thing, because like, you know, with Dallas Express and Tim O'Hare putting a target on the Modern and Sally Mann's photos, which now she's writing her autobiography, and there's a whole section about it, about what happened at the Modern. And around that same time, Amanda was in Destroying David at Circle Theater, which is a whole play about the importance of protecting art, especially from extremists. And there's just been a trend of targeting and hopefully people fighting back. And I would hope that we're past this, like, and especially to draw attention to it in a way that, if that's true, if
I'm
that's
just feeling
why
like
they're worried
Frankenstein
about,
and Halloween. I can't be that. I mean, like that's the whole theme.
Yes, but also I don't know if you've seen those tweets about how people talking about Charlie Kirk is the victim of the monster that he created, and so maybe that was, you know, some of the subject matter they wanted to touch on. But I don't know.
Let's go ahead and move into actions. We only have one action, which is right around the corner.
No, we have two.
You have two?
There's one very pressing one.
And that one is City Council will vote to cut public comment meetings down to just 10 a year. We, based off the website, had 14. I think we didn't have quorum in enough of those, so we probably had closer to 12. But I like
even of those 12, a lot of times they're just barely at quorum.
Yeah,
so if someone goes to the restroom, quorum's over, meeting's done.
So, again, Mayor Parker, ever since she got here, she has been hacking away at public comments. Absolutely. And we used to have public comments a part of every council meeting. They then made it its own meeting. And go ahead. You're more involved in these.
Yeah. So I started going to city council meetings around the same time that Maddie Parker got voted in. And you're right. Like every city council meeting would end with public comment where you could speak in person or over the phone. And then they cut it to where, and also if you were signed up to speak on something and it got moved, it would be moved to public comment. That was the first thing she got rid of. And then they moved it to where now it's its own separate meeting, claiming to make it easier for people to speak, which I feel like is a bad faith argument, but I can see why someone might think that's true. Because when you do sign up to speak for public comment at the end, you don't know when the end is. So you could be there hour and a half, you could be there 6 hours.
Yeah.
But by only having it once a month, sometimes it's not even once a month. Sometimes you have to wait a month and a half. Sometimes you have to wait 2.5 months to do it. And also because city council knows that people are only there for public comment and no one's voting on anything, they don't show up that often. Yeah. A lot of times you're right there.
Or they're virtual on Zoom. They're not even like showing, like, even
where they're clearly not listening to you.
Yes.
Yeah. And then also too, like, they have to have quorum for a meeting to happen. So if you're right at that 50%, someone goes to the bathroom or Zoom drops out for just a second, meeting's over, you're going home. You wasted all of that time.
Yeah.
And then also they just clearly aren't paying attention. You can see them on their phones kind of tuning people out. Like, I get that a lot of why this has happened is because city council, mainly Maddie Parker, hate Bob Willoughby so much, and Adrian Smith, and all the regulars that you see come to every public comment. They do say some not nice things. They do target Maddie Parker mainly, but
that's her job.
Members. Exactly. Like, how hard is it for you to just sit there for 3 minutes at a time and just listen?
Yeah, and to me, why this is dangerous is because we're living at a time when we're already feeling like human expression is being eliminated with fascism. You just talked about how
and democracy.
Yeah,
like,
and so
people should have a voice
correct.
in government.
So it's just like in a moment where fascism is coming and oppression is here, and you've seen the rise of people getting involved in public comments and City Hall with DEI, with the current situation with Charlie Kirk.
The racist
the racial gerrymandering. People are getting more involved, and now that supply and demand means, let's give them less chances. Like, it's the opposite direction of what people are craving. And what people are craving is for their voice to be heard.
Yep.
And what we talked about in story number 2, actually politicians listening and advocating for what people are asking for, which is currently not happening. And this only continues to ensure that the Craig Goldmans and the city clubs can still be who they are. And the Maddie Parkers who want to run a city for the city club individuals can still operate that without hearing from the people. Because if I ignore them, then I'm not acting for the people. But really, when we say what we say, then it's clear as daylight you are not speaking or caring about what people think.
The real trick with this is that they're voting on this week. So
and it came out of nowhere.
Yeah. So it's this Tuesday, and it's a morning meeting at 10 a.m., which makes it really hard for people to go speak. And you have to sign up to speak on this. And please, if you're watching, if you're listening to this before, it would be before 4 p.m. on Monday.
On Monday.
Yeah. Please sign up to speak. You have to do it in person now because they took away the virtual option. But please let them know how harmful this is for a functioning democracy.
Yes.
Like, our voices need to be heard. Because also, I want to point out, they're saying they're cutting it to 10 a year. That's insane. But also, that's 10 scheduled a year. They adjust the schedule when, quite often. And then also, that doesn't mean 10 meetings will happen because they don't always have quorum at these meetings.
Yes.
So there will be less than 10 chances for you to speak on anything that you care about at city council across the entire 2026.
Yeah, from February meetings to now, Michael Crane has only made 59%. So that means he was gone.
And a lot of those were virtual.
Yeah. So it's just like, when you're the guy out spending all the money on vacation travel dollars, you don't even make it to actually be there for the public. Spending $16,000 in Aspen, Colorado. It's like this is the most important thing that they should be taking seriously, is hearing from people, and especially when things like the Charlie Kirk incident with Mayor Parker, that's not an item. That's something that needs to be addressed immediately. Imagine, luckily, like, that happened on Saturday, and there was a public comment on Tuesday for people could be like, "Yo, like, enough is enough with this, like, behavior." But what if we would have had to wait 6 weeks?
Yeah, I mean, I have that problem all the time. Like, when I first support Fourth Art, when I want to go talk about issues for community art spaces and how the city needs to play a stronger role in art, it's so hard for me to get up there because, you have to schedule your whole time around those 3 minutes to speak. And if I'm not available then, I have to wait another month and a half.
Yeah.
I have to wait 3 months.
Yeah.
Just to get up there for 3 minutes of time. 3 minutes!
Yeah.
And they say they want more input. Chris Tackett helped us do the math, do the data.
It wasn't that much additional time.
Like 20, 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Is it that hard to just have that at the end of a regularly scheduled meeting where there are votes and people are showing up?
And this is something that Bob Willoughby and everyone else could all agree. Like, this is
that's going to be very weird for us to be on the same side as Bob Willoughby. Yeah, but broken clocks right twice a day.
Yeah, so this is something I think everyone can be on board with. Is bring public meetings back to every city council meeting.
If you believe in democracy,
yes.
you should. If you believe that your voice matters, you should be in favor of fixing public comment and making sure our voices can be heard.
Cool. You said there was another action. I don't see it.
Yes. The other action is in November 4th is the special election for Senate District 9 and the Texas constitutional amendments. And the deadline to register to vote is October 6th. So you need, first, everyone, whether you're registered or not, you need to go on the Tarrant County Elections Administration website and make sure that you are registered to vote. because we have an elections administrator who was put there in place by Tim O'Hare and the Republicans on the county commissioner's court. So you can kind of guess what kind of person they are. And they're definitely not as good as our past elections administrator, who was nationally renowned for how good of a job he did, making sure that everyone can vote.
Yeah.
And so they are cleaning up the voter rolls, which tends to mean they're getting rid of as many people as they can from the voter rolls. So even if you're registered to vote, you might accidentally be one of those people they've cleaned from the voter rolls. So just double check. The other thing that sucks is that Texas makes it very hard to register to vote. They don't do it automatically like they do in other states. You can't do it online like they do it in other states. You have to either mail in you have to print it out, fill it out, mail it in before October 6th, or I would seriously recommend hand delivering it to the Tarrant County Elections Administration office. That way there is no excuse. They cannot say that you're not registered.
That's truly the only way we can register to vote today?
Unless you happen to be a volunteer deputy registrar or no one. I'm one.
Yeah.
But
yeah, because that's
it's
horrific.
insane.
Yeah.
I could go on a whole other rant
about
that, about how anti-democratic it is not making it easy to vote. So yes, there's going to be a lot of amendments.
And that's a big Senate 9 is a big one. We got Taylor Remnant against,
and those amendments too.
Yeah, and
we'll have a whole episode where we
do
do a deep dive on those.
So it's an important election for us to get out the vote. And so we had Taylor Remnant on the pod. You can also hear that as well if you go in the past. So we're good on actions.
Yep.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for listening to the 817 podcast. We know this was a long one, but if you're here to the end, that also means we know you're a real one who cares about this city and care about the work we're doing. All I can say is that this is a game of numbers. This is a game of people power showing up, not settling, and you showing up and staying just informed and putting your toe in the water by just listening to this podcast is so much like, I just want to congratulate and say how much I appreciate that. Me and Wesley and Ann are just so excited to be a part of the ecosystem here. And we want you to continue to be a part of it and kind of continue to amplify your voice, your gifts, your talents, your proximity, your privilege. We need that. So share this with a friend. Get them to subscribe. Start talking about these topics because they're not political. They're about people and everyday issues.